So good morning, everybody. I think we will start now anyway, and we will just let people in as they come and join us. So maybe Fernanda, over to you.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure to have this breakfast, virtual breakfast with everyone. So let's start with the agenda. Just a small introduction. Today's a little different format than we usually have. We'll have a presentation from Mark Lancelot from Korn Ferry, and some perspective from different NEDs and CSOs. We're going to have a poll and a breakout room, and a bit of a panel to discuss the insights after conclusion and next steps. So super interesting. I always love this slide when we look a little bit into you, who's here today with us. So 33% from the Nordics, 67% from the rest of the world. So a quite international group today. That's super exciting, from 23 countries altogether. So it would be great, like Liselott was saying, if you could be muted now for the first part of the event. Super important, please make sure that you have your name in your participant identification. Otherwise, you won't be able to participate in the breakout rooms, in the discussions. Here the chat is open, so make your comments, share references, just put your questions. The chat is really open for this interaction during the event. And the presentation parts of this webinar are being recorded, just so that you know. And if you have any technical difficulties, just email us, and I'll be paying attention to the email also. Without further ado, we will start with Mark Lancelot, that is a partner on sustainability practice at Korn Ferry. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Great to meet you all this morning. I'm joining from the UK, near Manchester. So let me share my screen. Super. So I was going to talk for about 20 minutes. Wanted to cover 4 areas. So to talk about leadership and sustainability, which we see really as the key for action. Secondly, about the role of the Chief Sustainability Officer. Thirdly, about the fact that sustainability is everyone's job. So what does that mean for different functional leaders and teams in an organisation? And then lastly, to talk about the role of the board in terms of orchestrating the people agenda and leadership agenda for sustainability. So firstly, a point of view on leadership. So I'm not going to read out this, just pick out some of the key points. So from our perspective, we see sustainability really as a dominant paradigm for business going forward. The winners of tomorrow will be those businesses who solve the most pressing problems humanity faces. And to do that, we need leaders who can unleash the potential of their people, their teams, and their organisations. And each of us needs to be more than to deliver on action that's needed for the future. So we believe there's 3 key aspects then of leadership for sustainability, and leadership in its broadest sense. So leading organisations, leading boards, leading teams, leading ourselves. Firstly, it's about alignment between personal purpose and the business and the broader societal environmental agenda. If we can create that connection, that emotional connection, we unleash creativity, energy, passion for action. Secondly, it's about capacity. So as individuals, making sure we have the human capacity, so the physical, mental and emotional resilience to lead and sustain impact over time on what quite complex, challenging, overwhelming topics. And then thirdly, it's about mindset and perspective. So having clarity and focus of purpose around self-awareness, around inclusion, bringing others together, about integrative thinking across different disciplines, domains, subject matters, and then the courage to act and have impact in the organisation and beyond, and being able to both transform how organisations work whilst they're performing. So, key thought is it's that people will make the difference in creating a sustainable future, and leadership is the key to that. So that's the sort of frame for this organisation, and we'll now talk about what it means for the CSO, what it means for other functional leaders, and the role of the board in making that happen. So as many of you will know, either from personal experience or from colleagues or people you work with, the CSO role is a challenging role. It's still relatively new compared to other functional roles. And when we talk to people in the role, so some of the research that we've done in Korn Ferry, we see these 5 different roles, and in a way that starts to explain why the role is challenging. So firstly, there's an expectation to be a technical expert, so across the different domains of sustainability, up to speed with the evolving ESG landscape, what's needed in terms of evolving regulation, standards, reporting. Secondly, within the organisation, there's often a policy and control role, so setting out how some of these things are done and keeping those up to speed, making sure those policies and controls are communicated and embedded across the organisation. Thirdly, there's a need to act as a strategist, so thinking about long-term futures, potentially bringing insight and challenging others in the board or the executive team, so challenging their notions of what the future looks like, thinking about both risks and opportunities, and really working to integrate sustainability into the business strategy and plan, so it's not a separate thing to the side. Fourthly, then, the change agent role. So how do you influence colleagues, build organisation capability and understanding, sparking and inspiring action, and trying to harness that into momentum for change. And lastly, we see this external facing role, this ambassadorial role, which can be representing the organisation, whether that's with partners, NGOs, other industry bodies, and into the investor world. So really communicating what the business is doing around the topic of sustainability, which is of increasing interest to many stakeholders. So 5 different roles with, in some ways, different skill sets, different types of relationships, different modes of working that are required. The balance between them varies depending on maturity, depends on the organisation setup, but so a challenge to balance all those and know how to be effective in all of them at different times. So what does that look like in practice? I think the headline here is that it can look like different things. So the setup and construct of the Chief Sustainability Officer, it depends on the maturity of an organisation. It can depend on the sector and the material issues that the business is trying to face, and it can also depend on the CSO in terms of their experience and background. So we see the role reporting into different executive roles. Sometimes it's the CEO, and there's a case to be made that can be the most effective. But we also see it reporting into CHRO, CFO, CMO, and that can be, a reflection of the above points. So in terms of what the dominant focus for the organisation is, or what the background of the individual who's sometimes taken this upon themselves to champion within the organisation. And it tends to be in some of the larger corporates that we see where there'll be a direct relationship, reporting relationship into the exco. We've seen recently some examples of the role being split. So a sort of figurehead role who may engage in more of the external facing, the ambassadorial role, and the transformation, the change delivery being a separate role, I think reflecting some of the different skill set, particularly where there's a large transformation agenda. And the other example we've seen is double hatting. So where people have the chief strategy officer and sustainability officer, or chief CHRO and sustainability officer. So again, I think that starts to reflect the focus and the skill set of the individual of the organisation. And then the last piece of input around the CSO role is this. I'm not going to go through the detail of it. So at Korn Ferry, we have these we call success profiles. So it's really a view based on the organisations we work with and the search work that we do in exec search, really setting out what it takes to be successful in a role. And it talks both to what an individual would have to do, so the competencies they've gained and experiences, but also what they are like as an individual. So looking at personality traits and preferences and drivers and motivators. So for the CSO role, we see some competencies around resilience, influencing, impact, experiences around strategic leadership, communication, business acumen and transformation. But at the individual level, it's people who are great at building relationships, very self-aware, comfortable with change and navigating ambiguity, curious and wanting to learn, and really driven by wanting to make some impact in the world. So sustainability really is a core part of their identity, and the ability to make action happen through others. So this kind of limited need for power. So as long as things can happen, they don't necessarily have to have all that reflected back on themselves. So that's our view of what we see in terms of success profile for the CSO. So then to think a bit more broadly within a business or organisation, clearly, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the CSO and the sustainability team can't do everything that's needed. We see that organisations that are making impact are integrating sustainability into how the business works and how different functions work. So this is an industry agnostic view, and it will vary by materiality issues for businesses as well. But if you look into the finance department and the CFO, it clearly needs capabilities around non-financial reporting, maybe looking at sustainable financing instruments. So how do I access markets for green bonds or sustainability loans? And increasingly starting to think about how to incorporate sustainability into investment and performance appraisal. So that might be things like internal carbon pricing or even more sophisticated approaches. In the world of operations and manufacturing, a big piece around transition and retrofit. So some of our industrial clients, there's a whole piece around building capability and skills to retrofit and introduce new technologies. So lots of technical project management, systems engineering and specific technology skills. In marketing, this piece around customer and consumer insight. So what is it about sustainability that's particularly critical, and how do I create value propositions that meet those needs, as well as performance, price, utility requirements as well. In the world of procurement and supply chain, it speaks around supply chain development. So if I think about scope 3 and broader impacts and sustainability down the supply chain, how might I work with suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 and beyond, to help them transform, help them build capability. And in the world of IT, it's increasingly about understanding the carbon footprint of software and IT infrastructure and how to address that as a material item. And it might be about ESG data. So how do I continue to bring in these new data sets in a way that can be utilized across the business? So particularly in the world of financial services, that's a big topic, and many of the big financial institutions have big teams and utilities set up to look at ESG data. So you know, a broad set of impacts across the business. If we think about it from a sort of culture, sort of ways of working perspective, as I mentioned, this idea of how do you integrate it into the day-to-day activity. Research we done recently, we looked at the kind of cultural characteristics of businesses that are highly sustainable and have strong financial performance, and these 10 characteristics jumped out as ones that they are consistently strong at. So, you know, number one, about this greater bias towards action. So that's really recognizing that, you know, it's just innovation and experimentation is needed. How do you take action rather than trying to wait for the perfect solution when we think about sustainability? Point 3, you know, really about autonomy and empowerment. So how do you start to energize and allow the organization to act and move things forward? And then 7 and 8, I'll just kind of highlight really about being energized by the challenge of new and tough assignments and being resilient to overcome obstacles. So these are the characteristics that we've seen from looking at those organizations that are mature and successful around sustainability. And lastly, just to talk about the role of the board, which is really you know, the key bit trying to bring this together for the discussion this morning. We looked earlier this year at how organisations were setting up governance around sustainability and climate. You know, and there's a variety of different solutions out there. The headlines from our research. You know, firstly, you know, this increased frequency and rigor of reviewing sustainability and climate action plans. So in some ways, regardless of the construct, boards spending more time wanting to understand and review and assure and challenge around these topics. Secondly, you know, we see committees being set up, sometimes focused on sustainability, sometimes just focused on the climate agenda, and sitting within that overall committee structure, so to give the focus and scrutiny around the topic. Thirdly, in some of the larger and arguably more progressive organisations, we start to see sustainability and climate integrated into the board practices and even into the board terms of references and committees. So moving away from having separate committees, but to integrating it into key ones. So I think there's maturity there, both in terms of the organisation's ability to set strategy and execute on this, but also has implications for having the right board composition and skills and knowledge on those broader governance committees to be able to do that effectively, which is really the last point here. You know, so how do you make sure sufficient numbers of the board understand the topic and are able to challenge and hold the executive to account? So one of my colleagues, a little anecdote, one of my colleagues last week was talking to board members of a FTSE 10 organisation, and their big worry was, how do we as a board hold the executive to account when they understand more about this topic than we do? So, pointing to this fundamental challenge around skills and knowledge in the boardroom to do that effectively. And the last piece I just wanted to highlight. So I've got 2 slides here. I'm not going to go through the detail. So this is a crib sheet or a checklist that hopefully will be useful to you beyond this webinar. But we've set out some key questions that, as board members, you can be asking the different executive roles in terms of the people agenda for sustainability. So, for the CFO, asking questions around, what investment is needed over the next 5 years to reskill the workforce through transition, and what's that going to cost to run? How are we building competence across the enterprise to factor in, carbon emissions and broader sustainability criteria into the investment and budget appraisal processes? And if we look at the chief marketing and commercial officer role, very much about, the sales engine. So what type of sales force will we need in the future? Will we still have a business model where we're selling product to the same customers, or are we moving into solutions and services that we can think about more sustainable ways of delivering it? Do we have to work across the value chain with other partners to make those sales? And his last point really about metrics and rewards. So how do we set those up in the right way? And then on the second slide, if we think about the CTO, so Chief Technology Officer, how do we understand the green IT skills we need to decarbonize our business? And so I think footprint of IT and ICT is sort of 15% plus and projected to grow faster. So what does that mean in terms of green software development? What does it mean in terms of driving that down through vendors? How do we architect solutions that will most effectively lower the footprint? And it's much more complex than just going to a green cloud provider once you start to look into it. And then lastly, the Chief Innovation Officer, or the role that's really looking at innovation in the future. How do we think about innovation in a broad sense? So not just technology and products, but potentially into service propositions, business models, partnerships, which is quite often where we see the unlock that can create action on sustainability across the value chain. And how do we engage with innovators and startups who can be a big source of innovation here? And how do we set ourselves up to be an effective partner to work with a startup? So many of the startups I've known, they find it very painful to work with a large corporate who have processes and contractual terms designed for big vendors and big partners, and they're typically not appropriate and don't work at the pace that a startup wants to work. So I'm going to draw to a close there. I think I've just gone over about 20 minutes, but really some inputs around leadership really as the key lever to focus on. It's about the CSO, it's about other functions, but it's particularly about the board and how you can help and challenge the executive to take action around the people aspect for driving sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your research basically and your feedback from customers. We are, I can see that we got some questions, but I will save them for the summary questions that we will have in the discussion part, but do keep them coming. We will now have the joy of having 3 esteemed participants joining us. And the good thing about this group is that they all have plenty of experience from both sides of the table. So first we have Pia Heidenmark-Cook. She's the previous Chief Sustainability Officer at IKEA, and she's now a non-executive director at Max Burgers, Origin Material, Bupa, and several others. And we're glad to say she's a member of our Strategic Advisory Board. We also have Viveka Hirman Ryrberg, and she's the Communication and Sustainability Officer at Investor AB, which is one of the largest North European owners of industrial companies. She also has plenty of experience as a board NED, and she is a member of our Expert Advisory Board. And finally, we have Lotta Bergmark, who is the HR Director and also Communications and Sustainability Director at Consolis. And she has also held previously many NED positions, and she is frequently reporting to the board. So warm welcome, all 3 of you. And let's start with her, listen to the perspectives of Pia.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Liselott. Lovely to be here. Yeah, I think, and thank you, Mark, for the report. I think it's good to see a report where you look at both the operations and the role of the CSO and the companies that you find, the kind of common traits you find, and the board, because we often focus on one or the other, but to see it all together, because it is all together. You as having been CSO for 5 years at IKEA, you are very dependent on the board and the management, and some things to add in my reflections from listening to you, Mark, is around culture and purpose and values. And at least from IKEA's perspective, I felt that was one of our key drivers, that sustainability has kind of fit into the culture and the values of the company. Another one was having very clear goals and roadmaps, so not only having a 2030 goal, which we had, but also breaking it down to here and now business planning and kind of maybe not bonuses, but into the job descriptions and the incentive structure of here and now. And I think that is one of the challenges a lot of companies are sitting with, is it becomes kind of far-fetched 2050 net zero, and here and now we're just busy doing business as usual. And also appreciated the questions you provided at the end. As a board professional now, sitting on different boards since 2 years, it is a lot around coaching and supporting, but also challenging the management team, and asking questions and kind of putting new perspective is one of the reflections I have on my role, coming from 25 years in sustainability, having a business degree, so kind of being merged into the business environment, but still kind of looking at things a little bit different, like you said, with long-term view, outside in, kind of connecting the dots on how does the world work, which is one of the questions we got in the chat. There is a mindset, at least my experience from having had a team of over 100 people in my sustainability team, there is some kind of personal mission. My boss always said, people are purpose-driven at IKEA, but your team is even more purpose-driven than everyone else in the company. And there's that kind of, you get into it, because once you start learning and understanding about human rights or environment, climate change, biodiversity, whatever, you kind of want to do something about it. And I think that was the main driver of this leaning in, wanting to create change, wanting to make a difference. And I'm not saying that is not existing in every function, but at least in mine, I had it on steroids, that people really leaned in. And one of my biggest challenges as a manager or a leader of the team was how to create resilience and manage that kind of almost kind of stress in themselves, that look at all these problems, we need to do something, why are we not moving faster? So I think the resilience part that you talked about, kind of the mental, physical and emotional management of yourself and your team is critical in sustainability. I mean, it's in all roles today because of the world we're in. It's a highly stressful working environment, but especially in sustainability, because you want so much change. And unfortunately, a lot of companies are quite slow. I mean, the system is slow. And I would still say most companies are faster than policymakers, which also creates this tension in the system. So those are some reflections, but I hopefully there will be more questions later, but I think you put a really good base for us to have a good conversation further on. Thank you, Liselott.
Thank you so much, Pia. Let's go to Viveka and hear what your experiences are.
Yes, good morning, everyone. At least good morning to those of you who are in our part of the world, the Nordics. Thank you so much, Mark. I think it's always interesting to listen in to someone who has thought about what does this type of role mean, and also what's changing the board, and also from a board perspective. And in many ways, I agree with you, Pia. I agree about the purpose. I agree about people who usually work in sustainability are very purpose-driven, but we all are. And I think it's important to remember that this type of role, it's a business role in the companies. And it's more and more becoming a business role. We have sort of passed the phase when companies realized we need to work more on our sustainability approach, our sustainability agenda. We need to attract people who know something about that and start the transformation. But for many years, it was in a sort of a dual role in the company. And what's happening now is that sustainability is becoming truly integrated into the business. And that means also, and I saw we had some questions in the chat related to that, what's happening now in a European context with the CSRD, or the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, means a huge change for boards, a huge change for the companies. And why am I saying that? Because I believe that with the standardization, with the transparency that comes with CSRD, and also the changes in terms of board responsibility and the link between governance, strategy, and the reporting, and to be transparent about that, will drive major change. If I step back a bit, as I'm still with Investor AB, the largest industrial holding company in Northern Europe, we are a huge owner of companies listed, often the lead owners in companies like ABB, Atlas Copco, Electrolux, SEB, and we have also 10 wholly owned subsidiaries. So we have a huge impact. And over the past years, because we are such a long-term owner, we have made sustainability into one of our 3 strategic priorities, where the first one is increase our net asset value, the second, to pay a steadily rising dividend, and then the third, to deliver on our sustainability approach and the targets we have set. And we have done that because we truly, truly believe that there are so many business opportunities also for companies now, taking a long-term perspective, and for the companies to remain long-term competitive, they have to transform at an even higher speed. Often it's interlinked to the digital transformation, and to, of course, work with the risks and mitigate the risk, but to really act on the business opportunities. So if I would add something to your presentation, Mark, I would really highlight the business perspective of sustainability, even stronger than what you did. I would also highlight even more, at least in the European context or EU context, the changes for the boards now, because I think that will drive change at an even higher speed. I think it is important now to realize that companies will be setting goals and have the policies and formalize the reporting and so on. And then also to see to it that there are activities that are aligned with how to reach those goals. And then a final remark, what's also we are seeing now very strongly, and many of you probably see the same, is that sustainability reporting is moving into the financial reporting and will be at the same level as financial reporting. And that means that finance functions are now hiring sustainability controllers and so on, or educating and increasing the knowledge around sustainability. But finance functions are really good at reporting, formalizing processes and so on. So I think that will be a great cooperation between the sustainability function and the finance function of a company.
Thank you so much, Viveka. And it's certainly, and I can fully agree, a lot of these changes is now increasingly coming to the board. We just need to have the boards to focus on the strategic angle and not just the reporting angle. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lotta, you are in many ways in a kind of triple role and actually trying to get it done, but also moving with the cultural points. So maybe you can share a bit about your perspective on this topic.
Yes, absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Mark. I think it was a very good description of the role and its challenges, and also the marriage that you talked about, Pia, and also Viveka, when it comes to both the executive management team and the board, and how they need to really work very closely on this. It is new in a way to both organizations and boards to dig into this. And I think one of my experiences when it comes to the role and the importance when it comes to factors for success is really to very early understand that it's not a knowledge that sits within one person. You need to hold a lot of information and facts on the table at one and the same time, and you cannot be that person that knows everything in depth. And that goes for also the boards. So I think when it comes to the broader perspective of sustainability, not only the environmental part, you have to have different experts in a board. So you have to have a well-set board that has both, organizational people, experienced in-depth knowledge, at the same time as you have also technical knowledge and know-how. And specifically then in areas and businesses where sustainability has not been on the top of the agenda. And I can relate to the descriptions of both Pia and Viveka, being in very different environments. The kind of environment I'm in now, we're in a precast production company of concrete, and concrete in itself is a super good material. However, the binder, concrete and its binder is something that many people mixes up. Concrete is just a lot of good, things that you take from the ground, stones, sand, water, those kind of things. But you need something that binds it, and the binder is the ugly one here. That's cement. So we have, we have actually moved in to take on a transformation both in our company and in the industry. So a couple of years ago, almost 3 now, we set a complete new strategy. And I think when I think about the role and what is important in the company, but also for the board, is that sustainability needs to be really embedded in the strategy. It needs to be part of the strategy. You need to have the business perspective and understand how will this actually add value to the customers, so that you down the road can also charge the customers for these products. Also, I think, it needs to be, if I compare, I'm just smiling when Pia said, I have 100 people, I have 100 people as well in a way, even more, but not in sustainability. We have a very small organization, but we need to transform and we need to shift. So we have worked really very collaborative, both internally, cross functions, but also with partners and external partners to make things happen. This requires also, when it comes to, going back to Mark's profile, really strong collaborative leadership skills. Not having the need to have the spotlight on yourself all the time, but really working towards success for the whole of the organization. So I have a super team, I was going to say, but I also have a very committed CEO and peers in the executive management team. We started this journey, I think about 2.5 years ago now, where we talked about, and we really spent days on, who are we going to be when it comes to the sustainability? How are we going to be perceived? What do we stand for? What does it mean, in our organization? Really holding hand. What do we not say, and what do we say? What will we sort of back up every single day in the business? I think this has been a success factor actually for where we are now. We have spent a lot of work in engaging people, and we have done it through different methods that I can link then to the other areas that I'm responsible for HR and communication. So we have really been very tactical when it comes to first engaging our own people, so that when we run anything you see on LinkedIn or whatever, people will feel that, yes, that's us. And then we have started talking with our customers and the market. And it's been very, very successful. So when looking at, take our Spanish, business, for example, customers are really requesting now for large, supply providers that want to build really storage halls. We're talking huge places then for online sales things. They want our products. So it's really this push-pull thing that starts happening now. And it has taken us some time, but now we're there. So we can really start harvesting, that fact that people want these, steps that we have taken in sustainability. What we do is, you see my background right now, it's an upcoming week. We educate our own people. So we run, as much as we run safety weeks, or we have focus on health and employees and so on. We also have sustainability weeks where we educate. So we invite to seminars like this, but only for our employees. And then we educate them, every single MD or all the way down to the shop floor. So it's a journey. It's really a journey. And but I think, to me, the core has really been to have a very committed executive management team and board that supports what you're doing, and a board that is more onto it in a more frequent level. I think frequency, when it comes to the financial reporting and the sustainability reporting, has not been as frequent, but you need to start tracking what happens. Do we have progress? Do we not have progress? And that is why.
Thank you.
I think I stopped there. There's a lot to talk about, but
And you will have a chance to come back. I think it was very interesting, and also the way you have actually managed to get everybody engaged, which is not that common in most companies, but and that also, as you say, take a lot of leadership engagement to get that to be done. Thank you so much, Lotta. Now, everybody, it's time for you to work. We're now launching our poll, and if somebody can just nod if you see the poll. Yeah, very good. So the first question is around whether you actually have your sustainability well integrated into the business strategy, or whether it's a bit on the side, and if you have strategic business KPIs including sustainability. The second question is, do you have a named role that is responsible for sustainability as part of its remit? And do you have, is that role part of the top leadership team and reports to the CEO? And then we want to know if actually all top management, as Lotta talked about, has a clear responsibility in integrating different business projects. The learnings, so here we are very modest. We're asking if the learnings is done twice a year to the board. So let's see what you think that you have in terms of your work and integration. And we'll hold it on for a little while. And also, as kind of Lotta alluded to, of course, this is going to be very, very different depending on your industry. The industry in itself has very different challenges, but that also means that every industry have different opportunities. As I think Viveka well alluded to. So we'll wait for another 5 seconds if somebody else wants to fill something in, and then we will stop the poll. Okay, I'm stopping the poll now. Okay. And here we have the results, and I will just flip them through so you have them as input for the breakout discussion. In the first one, if it's well integrated, well, we have a mix. And I think that is a good reflection of what many of us can see, that it is a mix, whether you have managed to get it integrated yet. In the second one, if you have a role, that's also an even broader mix, if you have somebody dedicated to be responsible. I'm very glad to see that the sustainability role, or whoever has that responsibility, actually reports to the CEO. Then we have the question about whether everybody has clear responsibilities in the management team, and we have a good spread there. And then we have an understanding if we are getting the reports to the board. And we have about 40% that can still make an improvement and actually get a good reporting established. So this has been a fantastic sharing. Now it's time for you to discuss. And here's what we want you to discuss. When you get into the room, agree a chair to lead the discussion and a vice chair to actually look at the insights and being able to report it back. The key questions we want you to discuss is: how can boards ensure appropriate ownership and integration of sustainability into the organization? And what have you seen today, and what would you like to see? So what are the challenges and good practices? So if you can pick up just one practice that you think is good and can report that back when you get back to the rooms, that would be really good. And now let me see, we have a couple of fleers, so we'll have to reorganize you a bit into some different rooms.
Have done at Investor, we given all the changes from a regulatory perspective, and now that we were discussing before, now you know what we've all been striving for so many years, truly sustainability being integrated into business. It's happening now, and the role of the boards are changing. So what we have done a training, specific board training, and we have also trained the boards of the companies where we are the sole owner. So that everyone should be more aware and feel more comfortable to ask questions and know also the responsibility of the board, given what's changing now.
And can I ask, when you do that training, do you do it only for the board, or do you do it for board and management combined, or how does that work?
We have done it both for board and management. And also we are an investment company, also for the people who work at Investor who sit on boards on our behalf. We've done specific training for them as well.
Right, very interesting. Thank you so much. Lotta, how have you gone about to actually educate on all levels?
Yes, in my previous life, I was going to say, then it reminds about Vibeka's take and approach, which I think is the right one. It's really good if you can combine the executive management teams with the boards and have, at the same time as the training takes place, a good dialogue around these subjects. For us, what we've done now, we brought in consultants in the beginning to shape it all and work with us and challenge us. And we also shared those consultants and their findings with the board. And then we have sort of gradually educated the board. I think it goes in both directions, actually, when it comes to the reporting. And we learn a lot in those sessions. So that's where the training takes place, so to speak.
Right. Pia?
A similar to Lotta, a combination of board with management together, training on more general topics, putting it into a context, but then also specific trainings on the reporting responsibilities. We've had quite a lot of training on scope 3 because that is new with the methodology. And then I think also a lot of training happens through reading the material that we get from the sustainability committee, which also goes to the total board. And depending on the chair, depending on the board, if you can be open with your questions and daring to show that you don't know it all, which I think is quite different depending on boards. But to share that I don't fully understand this, can we kind of stay here a little bit so I nail this down? Because you learn from that as well. So learning from doing and learning from talking.
So that actually brings me into a topic I just need to ask, and that is double materiality. I mean, most people are super confused, and there's so many views of what materiality is. How do you clarify that? What have you done with your boards and leadership team to try to get them onto a joint perspective on first what materiality is and then what double materiality is?
It's a very timely question. We have just finished our double materiality analysis and we are into our committee tomorrow, full day. I don't, I think, we spoke in our team and I have taken the approach, how to eat an elephant, you chop it in pieces. And that's what you need to do here as well. Don't get scared and backbound by not knowing, or just try to dig in and see, what is this and how do we need to deal with this? And I think we're there now. We have done it, and it's not so complicated in a way. I mean, it's the two different perspectives of what kind of impact do we as a company have on the environment, and what does the external world have? What kind of environmental impact does it have on us, or other kind of impact when it comes to sustainability? So it is not complex, but there's so many fluffy words floating around, and there's so many consultants floating around as well. So I think we just have to protect the businesses a bit, actually, because they can charge heavily, I can tell, but it's not always that you add that much value. So now I'm very harsh maybe here, but you need to understand what you know and what you don't know, and you pay for what you don't know, but the rest you fix yourself.
Very good.
I can only agree with you, Lotta, and I think to really take a very pragmatic approach and think about sort of from a value chain perspective, different perspectives. And usually the companies know this, and then if you don't know, you dig deeper into. And also I want to say, take a pragmatic approach, and also we have to remember it's a major sort of regulatory massive storm over companies now. And the aim is from the EU to use reporting, etc., for the financial system then to act as a catalyst. But this will take time before the whole sort of everyone is through. It will take a couple of years. And don't be too sort of nervous about it. Be pragmatic, let it take time. You know most of it already. So it's it's a lot of new words and so on, and
Yeah.
it might sound, extremely theoretical.
Yeah.
Go back to the business again. Take a business approach.
Very good. And that leads me into the question around how do you turn it into a business KPI, not necessarily a sustainability KPI, but a KPI that integrates the sustainability topic. What have you done there? And maybe Mark, do you want to start this time? What have you seen?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, where I've seen businesses make strides there, it's finding those metrics which, as you say, drive both business performance and sustainability performance. So one of the clients I worked with had measures around revenue and revenue share from sustainable products, and using that really as a key focus to try and drive and energize the organization around it. And over time, they defined what a sustainable product was, and it started very simply, having one sustainability attribute, and then over time adding that so you get a more comprehensive view. So a very simple, pragmatic way that starts to then drive action. And then the other example I quite often talk to is if you look at Philips, so they have a target for 25% of revenue from circular products, services and solutions by 2025. So, very clear business metric, which then you can cascade down into the business, that's born from a view that there's demand in the market for those products and services, but also will have a impact in terms of reducing resource use, reducing carbon emissions. So finding out, equivalent metrics which combine both business and sustainability impact and create that simplicity, I think, is really powerful. It's not easy because it has to work for your business and your customers and reflect the material sustainability issues that you've got. But if you do that, that's a real indicator where you've integrated sustainability into the business strategy, as opposed to having financial metrics and then a carbon reduction metric, which is separate.
Right. Pia, what have you seen in this area with the integration? And
it's very similar to Mark. I think it's about the starting point is the business. I mean, businesses are in business to meet customer needs, and then there are unintended consequences on people and the planet. So it's kind of starting from understanding your products or your services and what you do, and then where do you want to be. And I think I fully agree on the KPIs and measurement, but it's also about the narrative. So you can choose to talk about carbon, let's say if it's CO2 footprint per product, as just an environmental or a sustainability measurement. You can also choose to talk about it in the sense of we will reduce risks in the supply chain by getting higher up on this one, or we will meet customer demands better by having a lower footprint, etc., etc. So it's also how you talk about your sustainability KPIs.
Very good, thank you. So we are closing up on time, so I want to get it's been a fantastic discussion. I would like to have all of you on the panel give a recommendation to board members. What should they consider in your mind at this stage? So who wants to start? Do you want to start, Lotta?
Tracking the sustainability KPIs more frequently.
Very good, thank you. Viveka?
I would say take the time to increase your own knowledge of the business and from a sustainability angle, and don't focus only on climate. It's a governance issue, it's the social part, and it's of course the environmental, climate and biodiversity.
Very good, thank you. Pia?
Yeah, I would fully agree with Lotta and Viveka. Then to add, to make sure to always bring it up in every board meeting. So even if it's maybe doesn't feel natural, but what's the question? Like Mark said, that in every topic there is a sustainability angle, because sustainability is about the business, to make sure to be that person, if no one else is that person, to bring it up.
Very good. Mark.
Yeah, I would ask the questions of the executive about the people aspects of sustainability. So that questions that we shared. So, you know, people are the key to this. So how do you get it embedded into the organization? So getting the executive team to understand that and take action within their different roles, for me, is the key.
Thank you so much. Any final point that you would like to make that we didn't bring up so far? And I know we had some questions. I think most have been covered by now. But did you have anything you wanted to bring up? No.
Can I just add one thing? And it's, I think there is this with, Viveka, you're saying this with all the regulation, and we need to be more professional, and I fully agree, and I think it's the right thing. But let's not make this into a tick box regulatory driven exercise. Sustainability is fundamentally about who you are as a company, how you serve your clients, how you serve society. And there's so many opportunities out there. And I think innovation comes from opportunity mindset rather than a tick box, a risk minimization mindset. So let's kind of lean into that. And the board has a critical role in kind of conveying that message to the management team. What are the opportunities here? How can we grab market share? How can we reach more customers? How can we be more profitable? How can we be more relevant? And that's what it's about.
Thank you so much, Pia. What a better note could you possibly end on than that point, that we also need to look at the opportunity side. Absolutely. I want to thank you so much, Mark, Pia, Viveka, and Lotta, for a really rich and interesting sharing with all of us. I also want to thank everybody on the call here for actually engaging in the committees. Do reach out to each other, contact each other, become members of Boards Impact Forum, of course, and join us. And we need to support each other in being brave in our boardrooms to actually make this change. So what do we have coming up? For the members, we really would like for you to answer a survey that is coming out in the end of the week. That is actually going out to all chapters globally. We're trying to understand what is the impact that boards are doing and what are the needs from boards to be making even more impact. So we'd love for you to answer that when it comes. On November 10, we have a very interesting webinar for you, and that is actually interlinking now the hottest topic that we all discuss on our boards, and that's AI. So we want to take the angle on what do you do in terms of guidance of AI for sustainability. So we'd love for you to join that. Then we will relaunch our board education. So if you have colleagues you think could up the game a bit in a similar way that we're doing here, that is both modules, trainings, reflection documents, and webinars included in peer exchanges, send them over in that direction. We also want to highlight that there are a couple of webinars that our colleagues are running internationally. And if you're interested in that, you can find them on our website or Climate Governance Initiative website. And there's a lot of good insights also from that. And finally, for the ones that go more to Pia's topic, we also have an opportunity for the people who are in Stockholm to actually join a future readiness masterclass for boards. So on creativity and innovation and sustainability, how do we drive that side of the topic? So we lift that. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you so much for engaging. Thanks to the panel and presenter, and thanks for all fantastic people.